Hey, thanks for tuning in. We are LivingFit, your trainer's trainer. We not only have education courses for trainers to upgrade their game, but we have full-on follow-along programs, workouts, exercise breakdowns, nutrition plans, and fitness equipment for you to reach your fitness goals. Now, enjoy the show.
Well, what's up, everybody? This is the LivingFit Show. I am, the host, Aaron Guyett, master coach here at LivingFit, but more importantly, the education director that gets the incredible opportunity to have badass guests like my guest right now, Jordan Wright. He's the owner of Twin Cities Kettlebell Club, and you can correct me if I'm wrong on any of these things. But something that I love about Jordan is he gets really into the weeds with kettlebell sport, and he has a podcast that's called the Platform Podcast. I've been fortunate enough to be a guest, and I've listened to a few of the shows. And you want to talk about nerds? I mean, kettlebell sport people are kind of nerds, anyways. They become the nerdiest of nerds. So, Jordan, thank you so much for hopping on the show.
Aaron, thank you so much for having me, man. It's an honor and a pleasure to be on. I appreciate you inviting me on.
Well, yeah, man. Let's nerd out. How did you find and get into this weird thing that is kettlebell sport?
I can blame a Marine, actually, as it were. So when I was when I was working at Lifetime Fitness, my manager Matt was a Marine. He was a devil dog, retired, and he was doing this crazy stuff with the 24 kilo bells. He was doing Turkish get-ups, and then he was practicing for his 10-minute snatch test for the RKC, which is here in the Twin Cities. And I had only done like swings and stuff with my conditioning coach in college. So I wasn't really that familiar with kettlebells beyond just two-handed swings with heavy bells. And so I was like, what are you doing, dude? And he was like, oh, I'm getting ready for my RKC. And I was like, okay, what's that? And he gave me all the background on that. And then I was like, oh, okay. It's like, that looks, that doesn't look that bad, because, at that time I was fairly young and strong. I was a power lifter and Olympic weightlifter, former college football player. So I had pretty solid totals. I could bench and squat, pretty well and, all that. So I thought, I'm big and strong. This will be fine. And he was like, oh, okay. He's like, well, then you can do kettlebell sport. Then he's like, if you think this is, that easy, he's like, let's do a double 24 long cycle and see how you do. And I was like, okay, what's that? And he was like, oh, it's just clean and press. He's like, that's, you do that already with the barbell. I was like, oh yeah. Okay. I was like, cool. So he gave me two 24 kilo. Now it was the cast iron, old Dragon Door was, but he gave me two 24 kilo bells and was like, all right, let's do as many as you can in 10 minutes. And I made it, I came out, like your typical young, dumb football player. I was like, let's go, balls to the wall. I probably did like 17 reps in the first minute. I made it about 5.5 minutes in.
Wow, that's good.
I was stupid though, but I was, none of these reps would have counted in contest, by the way, right? Like none of these were not good reps. This is just me, just grunting it out. And I got about 5.5 minutes in. I probably got somewhere in the 60s. I don't know, but I put the bells down because I just could not do another rep. Like I had completely maxed my lactate threshold. Like I could not do another rep basically because I just couldn't hold the bells any longer. I put the bells down, collapsed on the floor. And then I start getting where I'm starting to see spots and everything. And I'm like, I'm a puke. So I literally got up off of the floor of Lifetime Fitness, where I'm a personal trainer, run out of the doors, go outside, and just vomited all over the place because I was just that, like I pushed myself to that level. And then I came back in and I was like, that was awesome.
Glad for punishment as well.
I was like, I've got to learn how to do that. So rather than getting my RKC, I did some more research and I found Valery Fedorenko, and I actually got my WKC certification, World Kettlebell Club certification. That was my first kettlebell certification. Was in kettlebell sport. And then that was how I got into kettlebell sport, because I got pushed to the point where I threw up, thought it was awesome, right. and it was like, I have to do this. Clearly I have to do this.
Oh, that's rad. And now you have a podcast, and that's primarily, I mean, you guys talk about all sorts of other stuff, but that's the kind of the primary.
Yeah. So,
of the podcast.
Kettlebell sport is my main jam. So, a lot of my guests are kettlebell sport people. I'd love to get, I love to branch out and get power lifters on and Olympic weightlifters and strongmen. But it's all around strength sports and health and wellness and mindset and nutrition. But anything that is within the realm of health and fitness and entrepreneurialism are all fair game. But yeah, it's mostly kettlebell sport nerds and mostly for kettlebell sport nerds.
Right. Well, when you and Mike get to talking, I'm like, yo, bro, I'm out of my league here. These guys are pulling information that I know exists, but I had no clue. I'm like, and you guys are just top of mind, like, this guy and this technique and this thing. I'm like,
yeah,
whoa.
Nerd's gonna nerd, man. Like,
yeah.
And Mike has such a breadth and depth of knowledge. Like, I always like to say, like, I know a little bit about a lot of things. Like, my breadth is really far, but there are very few things that I go that I'm like super deep on. But he's been an EMS, he's been a finance guy, he's been he was a firefighter, he was in the army, he was like he did all.
Yeah, like now he's working for the government and doing training. I'm like,
yeah,
what? Okay.
Well, we don't talk about that piece.
Oh yeah. Well, now I have to kill everybody.
Yeah, exactly. Now we're both on the list. Oh.
So you have a competition coming up. How many comps have you run at the Twin Cities Kettlebell Club? Is it at the Twin Cities Kettlebell Club, or
it's actually so I worked out of a local CrossFit box about a mile from my house called the Athlete Lab, which is fantastic. Kate is the owner there. She's been on my podcast. And I was working on building up the Twin Cities Kettlebell Club here in the Twin Cities out of that box. And then COVID happened. And so I went from having like three, 4 people locally that were coming in. Shout out to Greg Anderson. He was the OG, my first guy who showed up regularly. And then COVID happened and the gym got shut down. And I was like, all right, what am I going to do now? Cause I need human connection and I need that time, and I need to get in the gym, or
so do all humans.
I become kind of a
even the humans that don't think they need it.
That's true. I know that I need it. Yeah. And so I was like, well, crap, what am I going to do? I was like, well, right. I guess we'll go on Zoom. And so I started doing Zoom classes 3 times a week. I got equipment for my house and everything, got my tripod and figured out how I could run classes and everything. And so I started doing Zoom classes 3 times a week, and they were free for anybody that wanted to pop on. And I went from having 3 people to then I had 5 people, and then I had 7 people, and then I had 10 people, and then I had 20 people. So now I've got, nice. Between 20 and 25 athletes typically that I work with at any given time. And we do Zoom practices 3 times a week. Now the attendance has dropped off again now that the gyms have opened up again and things like that.
Do you notice, this is just an off topic, but it's still in the same realm. Do you notice, like, I call it Zoom fatigue, like people are just fucking over it. Like, I don't want to be sitting on a screen. Do you notice that? Is that an observation from you? Obviously it's anecdotal, but
yeah, I think that's definitely part of it. Is that people just are like, if you have the option to do stuff in person, or you can get to an actual gym, like, I think a lot of people are starting to return to normal life. And so there's definitely some of that. I think some of it's Zoom fatigue. But we still get 3, 5, 7 people on a session at a time. And practices are optional, right? I keep it at the same bat time, same bat channel, right? Like, so that it's consistent for people. But, I'm also like, hey, you've got your programming delivered to you via G Drive. We've got a Facebook group. You can send me videos on WhatsApp for video analysis, because nerd's going to nerd, right? So I make it so that you can come to practice if you want that communal aspect, or you want to get live feedback from me in practice. But if you've got life going on and you just need to train on your own, the programming's still there. They can still they still get their feedback from me. They still get their programming delivered to them. It's customized to them. So it's been a nice kind of hybrid. It's become kind of a hybrid thing. So to answer your original question, we have had 1 Twin Cities Kettlebell Open. Last year was the inaugural Twin Cities Kettlebell Open. It was fantastic. We had about 50 competitors, which was great for a first competition. That was
coming. I mean, maybe some of it was because we were coming out of COVID and people are like, I just want to touch another person. I just want to be there with somebody else.
Yeah, there was definitely that. Like I had people that flew in from Canada. I picked them up from the airport, and it was like we had never met in person, but we had communicated so much on Zoom and everything that it felt like they were some of my closest friends already. And like we just had this massive group hug, like with, because we could, and it was like there was just such a moment of pure human joy and connection because like we got to do this big group hug, and it was awesome.
Well, and the kettlebell sport community is about it. You know,
100%.
I've got buddies that I haven't seen in years, and I could call them up and they'd be like, "Yeah, stay in my room," like tomorrow.
Yeah, absolutely. It's such a great crew of people to self-select into. Like they're some of the best humans in the world, and it's one of those things. We're all in it together alone, is what I like to say, because when you're on the platform, it is one of the loneliest places in the world, which is both great and terrifying at the same time. But everybody in the community, whether the person on the platform next to you is John Wild Buckley who wants to eat your soul, or whether it's somebody like me who is just wanting to do the best I can do, when you put the bells down and it's not like you're just like, man, we both survived, and like hugs go around and like fist bumps and everybody's just rooting for each other to do their best, and may the best person on that day win. Like, there's such a great community aspect to it, and people are so helpful. Like when I was first getting into it, like people willing to lend you their belt if you don't have a belt, like people teaching you like, here's how you chalk a bell. Like it's just such a welcoming, awesome community. Like that's what really hooked me in, as much as the suffering was the people that you get to suffer with and the camaraderie that comes out of that.
Well, and that's the thing is like, I obviously it's known in like the special operations communities, and in the military and in combat. It's like you go off and you suffer with somebody. There's a bond that can happen. It doesn't always happen, but it can happen. And then that bond becomes all but unbreakable.
That shared hardship.
Yeah. And that is something that I noticed that was a through line in kettlebell sport. It's like, man, you go to those comps together. So talk me through. So you had 50 competitors. It was all in person, or did you do any? No,
it was hybrid. Yeah. So it was because there was still some people that were really hesitant about travel and weren't sure, and people weren't sure if their country would allow them to travel. So we did video submission that wasn't live. That was video submission via YouTube videos that they could do up until the same day of the competition. They could submit their video, and then we had like 35 competitors in person. So we had a pretty good turnout for in person, and had a bunch of people compete online. And I actually did a cash prize, which I was one of the only competitions that I'm aware of that actually did a cash prize, which was awesome. So Andrea Lavoie actually made money on the competition because she's a beast. She came in and crushed a 10-minute triathlon with 20 kgs, and she's 115 pounds. I think she's just a monster. Wow. So she had the top overall coefficient, and she actually got a $500 prize, and second place got $250. And it was a ton of fun. There was a lot of good show outs, and it's going to be bigger this year, I think. October 22nd. So it will always be the third Saturday in October going forward, part of the IKO, which is Dennis Vasilyev's organization. So if you don't know who Dennis Vasilyev is, go look up that dude, because he is I'm not sure human, cyborg probably. I think
he's 100% a cyborg.
Russian
he's the
cyborg.
Most warm-hearted, loving cyborg that I've ever met in my entire life.
Yeah, he's that guy is a machine. But his organization is the IKO, and we're gonna be part of that going forward. It'll always be the third Saturday in October. So I plan on continuing to make it better every year, and hopefully it's going to get bigger and bigger. And it will also be a qualifier for the WKSF, because I'm part of the American Kettlebell Lifters Union, which is now the official representative for the WKSF, the U.S. representative for WKSF. So we're going to have it be a qualifier for making the U.S. team that competes for the World Kettlebell Sport Federation
next year in 2023. It'll be the first qualifier of the 2023 season. We'll be here at the Twin Cities Kettlebell Open. So yeah. So do you get the great pleasure of having Dennis? Is he showing up? Because I know he's recording it and he's doing a great job of accounting for everything and tracking everything and running numbers. But is he showing up to you?
I don't know if he's going to make it. He couldn't make it last year because it was back-to-back weekends with the Mexico IKO event. So I don't know. He wants to go
practice his Spanish. That guy is like quadrilingual, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, that'll happen. So I don't know if he's going to make it or not. I'm going to be out in San Fran in a couple of weeks. I'll ask him. We'll see if I can twist his arm a little bit. I won't do it too hard because he'll break me, but I'll see if I can get him to come. Yeah.
Do you need somebody there to MC, do a little behind the scenes?
I would love that. I would love that. I think that would be fantastic. We could get somebody there to MC talking, that's good at that. And then, I don't know if you know anybody that could do like a battle ropes certification on Sunday, the next day, like we could
I'm about
hook that up.
Yeah, I'm about that. I think we'll definitely set that up. Speaking of that, I know you got your ropes. Have you delved into any of the movement variability, conditioning stuff?
I have, and I'm going to say you're a dick, but in the best way possible.
Yeah. You're like, and I threw up, and then I got into battle ropes.
Yeah. It was like, I've been taking it easier than I usually do, or trying to ease into it more than I usually do, because I know it's a new movement and because it's different than what I normally do. But yeah, it's, as we figured out on my show, when you were on my show, like I realized you can choke down on the ropes to make them shorter. So I started closer to the anchor point than I used to do. And I'm like, oh, these are easier when they're 25 feet long as opposed to 50 feet long. So, I've played around with it a little bit. I did find out I have to have shoulder surgery, here coming up at the end of May. So I've kind of limited my movements more to lower body stuff. I got a biceps tendon that probably needs to be fixed and probably a labral tear. So we're gonna go in there and do that thing. But yeah, I've been playing with it. It's gonna be part of my conditioning protocol when I'm cleared to come back. I'm gonna start using the battle ropes more as my chosen. I think it's gonna be my chosen method for metabolic conditioning, because it's just really, I won't say easy is the wrong word, but it's very efficient at getting you into the right heart rate zone and being able to stay there and not running, because I can't run because I have too many knee surgeries from playing football. So I really like the battle ropes as a good way to stay in your target heart rate zones for specified periods of time. And it is very easy to get into the red zone if you need to. You need to go to max. It's pretty easy to get there. Staying in the green zone is a little bit lower, but it's a little bit more challenging, but you definitely can do it. So it's I found it a lot of fun. It's a lot of very immediate biofeedback. It's very kinesthetic. So I like it a lot.
Yeah, it's almost like mesmerizing and meditative too.
It is very meditative.
Yeah, especially if your waves suck, then it's like, okay, it's not so meditative. But when you start getting, that synchronicity.
Yeah, you get in your groove, you find your breath pattern, you find your movement pattern. It gets very meditative. Which is
kettlebell sport too. I mean, until it makes your heart explode and your muscles feel like they're gonna pop. But
your brain's yelling at you, you're gonna die. You're gonna die. You're not actually, but that's what your brain will tell you.
So what's your movement limitation for your shoulder?
It's nothing overhead right now.
Yeah.
Well, although now that, of course, once they said, we're actually going to do the surgery, I was like, okay, so does that mean I can start doing jerks and long cycle again? Because you're going to go in there anyway. And my PT was like, oh God, you guys, like, and I was like, I mean, seriously, he's like, just don't go heavy. I'm like, define heavy. It's like, you define heavy. I was like, okay. So I've been limiting it to like nothing heavier than 16 kg overhead. And then, just trying to listen to my body. If my biceps tendon is really screaming at me, like if I do a whole bunch of, repetitive waves and I start getting tired and I start doing it too much with my arms and not really using my shoulder blades and stuff, then I'm like, okay, I need to cool it. But like the side to side waves that are less biceps and like I don't remember what it's called, but I call it like, it's like the Iron Man or like the superhero waves where you're like twisting down and like punching the ground and then switching and like, that's awesome. That's awesome. It gets my heart rate up really, really fast. But there's all sorts of fun movements in there, but I've been trying to live within my my restrictions, but everything below my belly button's fair game. So I can still crush my legs, and, I can do plenty of squats and lunges, and I'm sure you could make me cry if you wanted to.
So I will say one of the best movements that I was doing for my training was just a lateral wave, but kind of because I had shoulder stuff going on too. And I was trying to, compete in nationals and then compete in the worlds and then compete at the Cali Open. Of course, shoulder injury the whole time or whatever, like, as you do. But lateral waves where I was just like basically shoulders down and back, pinning the scapula, packing the shoulder, and then pinning the elbow too. And then just really driving that internal external hip rotation, because that's what you don't get with kettlebell sport, right?
Yeah. That transverse plane. Yeah. It's huge, man. I love, that lateral wave is probably my favorite. That's really my go-to if I'm going to do a longer time frame set. Like that lateral wave is my
100%. And because you can toggle the intensity so much easier, right? I can go fast and hard and, bonk out in 10 seconds, or I can go slow and
you can pace it, and it's kind of like you're dancing with yourself. You're shifting back and forth.
Meditative, like, I love it.
Yeah. I dig it.
Cool. Well, that's rad. Okay. So definitely showing up for the Twin Cities.
Awesome. Love to have you.
So then definitely have to hit Dennis up and be like, yo, you're coming because I'm going.
Yeah. Bring Dennis, bring John Wild, bring Dolby, Buckley, bring the whole crew, man. Yeah. I love that.
I need hugs from the Chew High Cowboy crew,
Absolutely. Everybody does. Everybody needs that in their life.
Absolutely. So then talk me through, you're sending out online training.
Yep.
What are some of the methodologies that you're using? Cause I know that's some of the stuff that you nerd out with the most. What are some of the more effective things? What are some of the aha moments that you've had where it's like, oh, maybe this wasn't the way, or like, I want to know a little bit, just open up the hood just a little bit.
There's so many things I could take the full time just talking about this, but I'll try and keep it succinct. So, Dennis Vasiliev's book was a huge influence on me. Just because, he is Dennis, but he wrote a really, really awesome, it's a short, I won't call it a textbook because it's only like 50 pages, but it's a really succinct summary of training methodologies that are really effective, and understanding the different phases of a cyclic training sport. So for people that aren't familiar with what I mean by cyclic, it's repetitive motions over and over again at varying intensities where you really tax different energy systems. And you have to be able to understand that it's different from, say, like bodybuilding, where your phases are going to be very, very about what muscular response you want. You have to look at the intersection of both muscular performance, power output, as well as the energy system. So understanding total volume, how that affects your ability to adapt muscularly is important, but then understanding how pacing, time under tension, set duration affects your cardiovascular response, and building that conditioning component of it. And the intersection of those two things is super important. And then you have to throw in the recuperation, recovery, and mobility requirements of the sport as well. So there's a ton of pieces to it that you have to.
By the way, there's also mindset. So you'll become a quasi physical or mental therapist.
Yeah. Mindset's huge, because and that's a part that I really nerd out on, because I actually went to college to study psychology and sociology because I wanted to understand human behavior. That was really, it was with an emphasis on criminal and deviant psychology, which we won't get into why that is, but but it applies, and that mindset piece is huge too. So like Dennis has some great stuff about, taking some of the Russian methodology that's been really well established in research in Russia and translating some of that to English was super huge. So that book was huge for me. There's also Gregor Sobchin has the conjugate training method, which is, so if you know Westside Barbell, they're the kind of the pioneers of conjugate training for powerlifting. Well, he took that methodology and applied it to kettlebell sport. So there's a lot of Olympic weightlifting, squats, some of the big powerlifting movements, as well as kettlebell sport as part of that. Now that has been more challenging for me to implement with some people. It's really important to understand somebody's personality type. So if you've got somebody that wants to bounce around and wants a lot of varied stimulation, conjugate training is really effective for them. For other people that are like, no, I want the plan. Give me the plan. Tell me exactly what to do. And I really want to do the same movements over and over again. Like if you've got
I want to see my progress.
Yeah. And you'll get both of those people in kettlebell sport, which is really, really interesting. You'll get those type A really goal driven personalities, but also need a ton of variant stimulus. And then you'll get the people that are like, no, I really want to do this thing. And so like understanding who you're working with is super important. So that conjugate method is really, really cool. I'm nerding out right now. I've even got it right here in front of me. I'm doing you can't see it because of my filter, but BioForce. Joel
Jameson.
Yeah. Joel Jameson, BioForce, certified conditioning coach. I'm just getting into that right now. And so as a byproduct of our conversation, we're really talking about energy systems and how it's always hybrid between you're tapping into the 4 different energy systems. I was like, man, I really want to go deeper on that. So I'm doing the Joel Jameson certification coach and looking to apply that, or conditioning coach certification, and looking to apply that to kettlebell sport. So I haven't really answered your question, but there's so much.
Well, you have, because it's like, hey, there's a bunch, and we just peeked under the hood. We didn't like parse apart every single aspect of it, but it's interesting. So Joel Jameson has Morpheus, right, which is the HRV. And the raddest part of that is it's telling you, like, is your nervous system taxed? And if it's taxed, then we're going to do basic general conditioning. But if it's not, we're going to go balls to the walls today. We're going to take your intensities. And the cool part is that could be intensities in a 1 rep max, or it could be intensities in a 10-minute set. Right. And we're just going to go freaking crazy today, and getting that immediate feedback as well. And then I think that you can serve to both of that personality that you were talking about, where it's like, they both will get the opportunity, the one that wants to kind of do a bunch of different things and have this dynamic interplay, constantly being entertained with their movement or whatever. And then the other person is just like, I'm going to just stick to the plan step by step. But it's like, this is when I turn it up. This is when I turn it down.
Yeah. Having that objective measure of when it's appropriate to crank and when it's not is really important, because you'll have people that are wired, I'll say like you, that left to their own devices would always go balls to the wall. Yeah. Right. And then you'll have,
just going to drag my dick in the dirt, like every single.
Yeah. And then it's your podcast, man. I wasn't sure if I could swear. I've been trying to mind my language.
You've done so well. No, you can. It's not kid friendly podcast. Okay. But,
yeah. And
typically we're not dropping F-bombs every other word. But
you've got your people who are also probably more like me that are like, yeah, my natural predisposition is to sit on the couch and watch TV, but I've realized that that's not good for me. And now I also have really fallen in love with movement and being fit. But it's good. Left to my own devices, I would probably take it easier on myself, except for the fact that I'm super goal oriented and I want to progress. So I like to push myself, but I have to know when it's appropriate, because, I work for a startup. I have 2 kids. I train all these athletes as well on the side. So like I'm running and gunning, 12, 14, 16 hour days sometimes, and knowing that cumulative stress adds up, and seeing an objective measure when I wake up in the morning that says, hey, your HRV is at 75% recovery. So maybe today's a good day to do a moderate intensity workout. And then the next day, I got my full 8 hours of sleep. I took good care of myself. I ate well. And it's like, hey, you're at 95%. I'm like, all right, we're doing, 1 minute on, 30-second rest interval, red line sprints for lactate thresholds, or we're going to do a 7-minute a 7-minute long cycle set, right? And, depending, you're going to redline in some form or fashion, right?
And like swallow your throw up 3 times.
Yeah. Knowing that that's the right day to do that is super cool. And then also knowing like, okay, today's a good day to just hop on the bike for 30 minutes or go for an hour long walk or, whatever, do some easy lateral waves for 15 minutes and then do my mobility, right? Like knowing those things is super cool. And I'm really enjoying it. It's definitely, tapping into that nerdness, that latent nerdery that is there's very little latent nerdery left, but I'm going full nerd on it. So yeah, I love it.
Yeah, that's nice. So I will create a small objection to like Joel Jamieson's work and knowing when to toggle and whatever. And only, obviously this isn't good by any stretch of the imagination, but it does work. And that is just uber consistency for consistency's sake. I was just talking to Danny Lear, who he's like incredible weightlifter. He just won, I think last year he won Masters for his weight, for, all 3 of the lifts for Olympic lifting or whatever, weightlifting. And he obviously trained pretty hard, but we both agreed. And so this was my nationals, worlds, and then Cali Open experience. I enjoyed maybe 2 or 3 of the training sessions, right? Of the entire year. Like that's a whole year of training. That's training every single day. At least I was training 5 times per week, right? At that time, sometimes 6 times per week. And I enjoyed maybe 3 of the sessions. And he said the same thing when he was training for the world championships for weightlifting. And he's like, but the consistency and the progressive overload is what worked. And if you want to get the W, sometimes that's what you got to do. Now, man, wouldn't it be rad if you could sync up your physiology and biological feedback system with like an HRV and then toggle that accordingly and probably enjoy more sessions, which would get you to come back more often. So again, that's my slight objection, but I'm not saying it's good. Have you undergone anything like that or walked any clients through any of that stuff? Yeah.
So I think you're touching on something important and to his credit, I will say Joel Jamieson does say this, is that conditioning requires consistency. It requires frequency of training. Mm-hmm. So like, level 1 for him is a 4-day a week, cycling between, recovery, moderate and high intensity sessions. And then for level 2, it's 6 days a week. So there's only 1 day off, but it's just making sure that you're undulating intensity appropriately. So it's not, and that's 2 moderate sessions or 2 high sessions, 2 moderate sessions and 2 recovery level sessions. So that's still, a decent amount of activity. But yeah, I think you're absolutely right. Like there was times, one of the mistakes, and I'm going back to your earlier question, right? Like one of the mistakes that I've made with my athletes is I've done it both ways. I've pushed them too hard too soon, where we were doing 2 biathlon sessions a week and 1 long cycle session a week. And the volume was super high and people were telling me that they were really sore. And so I was like, okay, cool. Take the next day off. Like we've got another biathlon session coming up in 2 days. Take these next 2 days off and come back for another biathlon session. Well, then they were just taking them completely off and not doing anything on those because I told them to. Like they're listening to me. I said, just take these next 2 days off, and they're doing that. Well, 3 days a week, even at super high intensity, is probably not enough to build your conditioning. It's a good way to get stronger. It's a good way to get hypertrophic response. But from a conditioning standpoint, the energy systems need consistent application of stimulus at the appropriate levels, right? So understanding that was a mistake that I made. Right. And I still have to work with my athletes on that. And I'm still learning on that regard too. Like, I own it when I'm like, hey, I done fucked up. Like that's my mistake. Right. Like, I just had an athlete this week, who did his test sets, and he was like, dude, he's like, I didn't perform nearly as well as I expected to because I need more long sets. I haven't, like the durations have been short. I'm like, well, that was the intent of the block you just came out of was power. We were working on strength, then we were working on power. Now we just did 1 endurance block before we tested you. I was like, that's not enough time for your energy system to catch up. I was like, you're not fully expressing that strength yet. I said, but that was a benchmark for me to program endurance block 2 to see how far into a 10-minute test set could you hold your pacing and seeing those things. Right. But but he was absolutely right that he's not getting enough consistent stimulation of his conditioning to express the strength that he had built. Right. So learning that interplay has been really, really important. And I think you're absolutely right. Like consistency longitudinally is more important than intensity. Like I can give you the perfect, balance of intensity and everything. But if you're cutting your high intensity days because you're just not feeling it, or, whatever, you're frankly taking the easy way out. Like you don't want to do the days that suck. And we're all guilty of that, right? Like I get it. Like we're all guilty of that. It's like, no, you look at your program and you're like, fuck, Wednesday's going to suck. Like you're just like, God, Wednesday's going to suck. I really don't want to do that one. And people will just grab a different workout because they're like, I just wasn't feeling it. And I have to walk that line between being like, okay, I understand life is hard right now and that's okay, but then you also have to be like, hey, we're 5 months out from competition. So that seems like a long time, but if you want to do what you say you want to do, we can't skip our heavy days. We got to do our, so there's that consistency is huge. Variance of intensity is huge. Psychology is huge. And there are some people that can take a couple of days off and it doesn't mess with their routine. They'll be able to hop right back into it when they feel better. And then there are people that's like, I got sick and had to take a week off. And then I ended up taking a month off because it was just hard for me to get back into my routine. And knowing your own psychology and knowing whether or not you're somebody that needs that consistency to stay on track, that's really hard too. Like, so there's consistency, I think, is the most important piece for anything. When you're talking nutrition, you're talking training, just staying consistent and having your anchor habits that you stick to, I think is the most important piece of it. And the rest of it is details. We're talking about how do you get to peak performance? How do you get to be the best? How do you be a world champion? Well, then it's consistency and technical application, attention to detail, right? Like that's the next level shit. But the basics is do something more often than you don't, push yourself, recover, eat well, take care of yourself. But, it's got to be consistent or it doesn't really add up. It doesn't accumulate if it's not consistent.
Absolutely. Yeah. So here's a wrench in the gears. We've talked about all of the things that apply in training and setting up for the comp. I think the beauty of kettlebell sport for me is that it's one event, right? And so then you're reverse engineering back from that one event.
Unless you're a psycho like me who wants to do triathlons, then it's 3 events and there's something wrong with you. but it's still in that one date, right? It's one day I'm gonna pour it all out on the platform. Let's reverse engineer to see, how we're going to stair step to this, whether it's linear or undulated or conjugate, right? All these different ways to get there. And then personality driven and then mental and then recovery and all these things. So I had one person that I trained, 2, I guess, but one in particular where this person would crush training, right? Like crush it, like PR, just constant progressive overload, crushing it. Would get to the competition and do like a fraction of what they could do in their training sets. And obviously competition is different, right? You're in front of a bunch of people. There's all that stuff going on. Have you experienced that? And if you have, how have you coached? Cause I to be honest, like that was probably one of my greatest failing points, I think, as a coach, is like not being able to figure out the recipe for this particular person. Yeah. So, okay. I'm going to nerd out and throw some big words out, right? You're talking about sympathetic activation, right? You're talking about that flight or fight mechanism, which I think, you were just posting about a couple of days ago. Fear, right? That stimulates that sympathetic nervous system. So you have general level of excitation that you don't get in training. Training is
NSCA says arousal.
Yeah. Arousal.
Anyway, sorry.
So you have that general level of excitation when you come into a competition that you don't have when you come into training, right? Yeah. So there's two ways we can go about addressing that. And how do we adjust for that? One is you either work on being able to calm yourself when you come into a competition so that you can get closer to your baseline level of excitation at which you train. Yeah. And that's where mental training, visualization comes in. You go mentally through your sets. You get used to adjusting your heart rate down. There's part of that. You start visualizing things, meditation, being able to do breath work to calm your excitation level down, right? But then there's also the other way you can go about it is, how do I raise my excitation level in training? Right. How do I, and that's where we can actually start saying, that's where you shorten rest intervals, or you push people. You're like, okay, these were actually warm up sets. And they're like, what? This felt like the workout. It's like, yeah, well, now we're at the baseline heart rate that you walk into a competition at, like, and seeing what your resting heart rate is when you wake up in the morning. Yeah. And that you know that you generally walk around at 60 beats a minute. And then you put on your heart rate monitor at a competition. You're like, shit, I'm already at 90 beats a minute. I haven't even stepped on the platform.
Yeah. I haven't done shit yet. I haven't even warmed up.
Like I'm like right now, I'm feeling that in my chest just talking about it, because you get so hyped. And even if you don't 100%. Think you're going to, right? Like I had one of my athletes had that. He was like, I want to go in the first set because I want to go in the first flight because it was his first competition. And he was like, I want to go in the first flight. And I was like, no, you shouldn't do that. It's like, you don't understand. Like, you're going to be so nervous. You're going to be so hyped. I'm like, I really think you should wait, calm your nerves, let some other people go first, like see how it goes. And he's like, no, I was like, all right, cool. He's like, I'm a performer. I'm used to being on stage. I've been a musician my whole life. He's like, I'm used to adrenaline. I'm like, okay, cool. Right. It was, I explained to him as best I could. I told him, but at a certain point you're like, okay, you make your own decisions. You're a grown ass man. That's fine. Yep. So I let him go. I put him in the first flight and he bonked. He made it to about 5.5 minutes into his long cycle set. And in competition, or in practice, he had been going the full 10 minutes, or he did well on his 7-minute test set, his 8-minute test sets. I knew he had the capability of finishing the 10 minutes, but he just came in so that he bonked. And then he was really upset, but then he did really well in jerk and snatch. But he told me after the comp, he was like, you were right. I shouldn't have been in the first flight. And so we've been working on mindset. We've been working on that visualization component, being able to calm yourself and being able to translate arousal into, it's not performance anxiety, it's performance excitement, right? We're excited for the opportunity to go, but also understanding that we need to have the training. We've done it enough times mentally in our head that it becomes autonomic, right? We know that what we're going to do. We know what our pacing is. We know how to breathe. And you've probably heard some of my talking points on my podcast where I have people check in at certain points in their set, because a 10-minute set has multiple points, right? The first 2 minutes are always like your body's in that. So I'm like, okay, we know that the adrenaline dump is going to happen around 2 minutes. That's just when it typically happens in a 10-minute set. So that's when you're going to have that, okay, the initial adrenaline has worn off. And now you're like, okay, I finally feel okay. And you'll get through minutes, 3, 4, 5. And then it'll start to get hard around minute 5, because your brain will be like, I'm only halfway. I'm really tired right now. Like, this is hard. Holy shit. We're only halfway. And so I always have people check in at halftime and see, how am I doing? How is my pace? What's my number? Am I halfway to my target number? And how does my body feel? Is that a realistic number? And then we go minutes 6 and 7. Are usually okay, because you've checked in at halftime. You're like, okay, I'm halfway through. You cruise, you recalibrate. And then minute 7 to minute 8 is like when your brain starts screaming at you. Like, I don't care who you are, how many sets you've done, like everybody, minute 7 and 8, especially as you're learning this sport, minute 7, 8, those are the death minutes, man. Those are the minutes when most sets die. That's because
people drop those bells.
Your brain starts screaming at you, put him down. We're going to die. Put him down. There's my shoulder hurts. My bicep hurts. My butt hurts. My back hurts. Just your brain starts coming. It starts machine gunning you with excuses why you can't finish the 10 minutes.
Such a good.
It machine guns you. And then, and then you get to minute 8 and you finish minute 8. As soon as you see that clock hit minute 8, you're like, 2-minute warning. I got 2 more minutes to go. And then your brain says, okay, we can finish. Yeah. Once you get through those minutes 7 and 8, your brain tells you, okay, I think I can do this. Right. Yeah. And then you're like, okay, you recalibrate there. How much do I have left? How much gas pedal do I have left to press? Yeah. And depending on the person, some people I'll be like, okay, we crank minute 8 to minute 9 is when we start cranking the pace back up. And 9 to 10 is just give me everything you got. Unless you have 2 other lifts to do, unless, and that's understanding whether are you doing biathlon? Are you doing long cycle only? You doing snatch only? You doing triathlon, right? Like knowing, but like that last 2 minutes, that's when you can go balls to the wall and you just give it everything you got. And that, that's the That's the grit. That's the grit portion of the set, right? Do you have the mental fortitude to finish when
physiology is like, that's not even a thing.
It's all psychology at that point. It's all how much can you suffer? How much can you take? Are you somebody that would rather die on the platform than put the bells down? Or are you somebody that wants to be safe, and the nice thing is that's trainable.
Motherfucker on that last minute.
Yeah. You've been trained throughout your life. You have self-selected into populations that push that boundary over and over. A lot of us have chosen a life of comfort, and that's okay. Yeah. But you choose kettlebell sport as a way to develop that part of your brain. And that it is a trainable skill. You can expand that. And the more that you get used to tapping into that edge of your capability, that fringe of your capability, and realizing that you can do it and you will get through it, and you are a tough person, you can reset your identity through hard physical activity, through doing hard things. The more you tell yourself, I am somebody who can do hard things, and you present evidence to your brain that you are somebody that finishes things, 100%. You train that model, and suddenly your brain starts believing, okay, I'm a tough motherfucker. I am somebody that finishes sets. I am somebody that finishes. I can do hard things. And it's awesome because you can literally change your identity through your self-identity through continuous, consistent application of, I'm going to push the boundaries of my capability.
Dude, giving me chills. Jordan, loving it. So real quick, we obviously we're running out of time. Finish. But before I ask the final question that I ask everybody, what is Living Fit to you? I wanted to ask, are there any different rules or rule adjustments or anything like that in the Twin Cities competition? Or is it like your kind of traditional?
It's WKSF certified, so it is going to be fairly traditional on the rules and everything. But we do try and do some stuff to make it, to have some fun with it too. Like, so last year,
because coefficient, right? Like that's
So the coefficient piece for prizes, right? And then I also I don't do the prizes go to the best performer. The cash goes to the best performers, but like for the stuff like giving away the shoes and giving away the other stuff that sponsors have given us, that's by raffle, because I'm like, guys that have been doing this for 10 years that are going to come in and win the competition don't need another belt. They don't need another pair of shoes. They don't need so that stuff I'm doing via raffle so that it's fair for everybody, which is kind of cool. And then we do like a relay last year, rather than doing the traditional like jerk relay. I came up with I was like, it's going to be a team relay where one person's going to do 3 minutes of jerk. One person's going to do 4 minutes of snatch, and one person's going to do 3 minutes of long cycle. And so you could see when people, but it was to a certain, or it was to 100 reps. Sorry. It was 30, 40, 30. So you can see the faster that people get through those reps, the quicker that team gets to the next lift. So you can actually visually see like who's ahead, as opposed to just counting reps. Right. So I was trying to make it more visually interesting for the people that are there watching. So you could see like kind of the passing of the baton was who got to snatch first, and then who got to long cycle first. And then can the person, they're down by 2 reps, can that person catch up to the other person on long cycle? It was super fun. Both of those relays, we had 2 flights of relays, and both of them were neck and neck, like, and it was, so that was really fun. So that's a little different, but
when it's 3 person, I like the 3 people. Yeah. Right? You can have more of those relays happening.
Yeah. So I was just trying to experiment with some different ways to hopefully make the sport a little bit more visually interesting for spectators, and have it still be a lot of fun for the lifters. And we had some shit talking, and it was, there was one of the flights was boys versus girls, so we went back to 7th grade. It was for sure, but it was, it was super fun. It was a lot of fun. So, but it's still a fairly traditional meet, it's still kettlebell sport, but it's a good time. It's a really good time. I
love those added punches. And I'll tell you what, we just kind of ended up there incidentally, but having you talk through the minutes for somebody who's never seen kettlebell sport, or somebody who's interested, to have you talk through it. So now if they watch it, they'll be able to, see that in that person's facial expressions, body language, right?
Yeah.
Pace, right? Because pace it's such an important thing. And if you don't understand the concept of pace, you're wondering like, why is this person breathing so much in this first minute, and just seemingly chilling?
Yeah.
It's like, because they don't want to die. And
because minute 7's coming.
Yeah, exactly.
It's coming.
For sure. I love that. Yeah, I would do all sorts of weird things in my brain to
everybody deals with it differently. That's one thing that's super interesting too. The psychology of how people deal with it is super interesting.
Well, I've tried to do be at peace and calm and focus on breath or focus on, I don't know, like Dennis talks about, he's constantly just adjusting his technique and his breath and, all of that stuff. And okay, that's good.
That's how cyborgs handle it.
I know. I'm like, this is not humanity here, buddy. I have emotions.
You're a warrior. You have to bring the war to the set. I have a feeling that's a big part for you. You have to bring the fight to the set.
That's absolutely it. So, obviously we've talked about a ton of things, and most of it kind of hinging around kettlebell sport. But clearly you're a coach that cares. You're a coach that nerds out probably more than most coaches, which I adore, because I'm a nerd as well, self-proclaimed. Yeah. But we've also, it's not just nerding out on the science. It's like there is the psychology piece to it, which is a little bit more ethereal and very person to person. So what is Living Fit to you?
Yeah, I think
the brand, but
I think I touched on it a little bit with what I was talking about with being able to redefine your identity. So for me, as somebody that at one point was over 100 pounds overweight, like being able to redefine who I was as a person was a huge part of that was being like, I can do hard things. I can finish things that I start, and realizing that there are anchor habits that you need to do consistently. Even if it's as simple as I go for a walk every day. I make good food choices most of the time. I don't drink on weeknights. Like it doesn't have to be crazy. I only eat chicken and broccoli and I work out 7 days a week, no days off, grind, bro. No, it doesn't have to be that. Living Fit to me is about finding the ways that you can reinforce the identity of the person that you want to be the person that you want to be through consistent habits that you can sustain for the rest of your life, because this isn't perpetuity. This is until they burn your body. I want to be the best version of myself the day that I take my last breath. And that's what Living Fit is to me. It's about that. It's trying to peak at the end of your life.
Yeah, bro, you gave me chills when you were talking about that like 5-10 minutes ago, and you just gave me chills again. And man, that's amazing. I'm honored to have you on the show. It was an absolute blast. I want to talk about a ton more, so we have to have you back on the show.
I'd be honored to.
I want to talk about okay, we only have so much time.
It's only so much time. We can't do Joe Rogan style.
I know. Well, I guess we could. We could,
but that's an in-person. That's an in-person with a beer kind of thing, I think.
Dude, and we'll make that happen for sure, especially for coming out in October. Absolutely.
Love it.
Absolutely.
I'd be honored to have you. So thank you so much for having me on.
Yeah, well, thanks again.
Hey, for more interviews like that, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Also, if you're looking for not only those interviews, but follow along programs, exercise breakdowns, workouts, nutrition plans, and fitness equipment for your fitness results, make sure you hop on to living.fit, become a member today, and I'll see you on the next one.